So as often is the case, we're recording after our Friday gathering at farmer's market. Now that's the summer with the other guys, and our buddy, Todd, says, well, Kevin, so all your pitch about, well, let's go from the beginning of, living another 5 years longer in the nursing home. We'll come back to that. He says, but that kind of got to me. He says, I was just with my family and his mom is what? Immobile.
Right. You can't walk.
Can't
She
walk.
can barely walk, he said.
So they just spent whatever vacation time together and they're off doing whatever. And it wasn't epic movement things. I don't know what they're, go see the sights and walk down to the beach. I don't know, whatever. And she just couldn't. And he said it was just convicting.
Yeah. That he said, I see that, meaning I'm aware. I recognize the fact that I don't want to be becoming that way. And again, then we all kind of talked about all of our parents and noticing as they all get older and approach 80 and
yeah. Well, so it was a motive to my, love of motive. He found something, thought, wow, there's something that's a motive, something driving me. But now, of course, and I did quickly, because you and I are looking at each other going, okay, wait a minute. And we said, okay, now let's go back though to what he began with of saying, so I can live a little bit longer in the nursing home. I mean, that is, I think, a myth, and we talked to it, but we're going to get focused to it today. I mean, when you look at the headlines, I saw them recently and it talks about life expectancy, lifespan. Right. And we all talk about that as the primary reference for health. Well, you live healthy so you can live to be 100. And I cited your example from a long time ago. You tell it.
That
about the elk.
Right. That here we are living in Colorado, and how often do you see an old, feeble elk hobbling along behind the rest of the pack, not really being able to keep up? And the point is, you just don't. But yet when it comes to humans and our culture now, we see a whole lot of that. So there's a bigger and bigger trail. I'm imagining humans as a pack now, where we're trailing. And this is going to come across as very negative to my sweet grandma, who is way back there. And as humans, we don't think like that. Like, oh, you should just go off and die.
Yeah.
What we're trying to bring our attention to is in the middle of the pack, where we as middle-aged people is to shift the focus, not from just living longer, but to have an increasing health span, thriving span, vitality span, and lifespan. And in fact, I would probably argue that if your health span is longer, your lifespan is likely longer as well. And so then you and I were talking about, gosh, that would be a great thing to talk about on the show of what is health span? How do we define it? What does Dr. Google say about it these days? How's our culture approaching this question? And here's our friend Todd, who's saying he didn't really resonate with us in the past when we were talking about, being resilient through fasting or exercise or stuff like that. And that never floated his boat or whatever. And he kind of said, that always chapped me or whatever in a friendly way. But then you go home and you spend time with people who are now in your sphere who are not well.
Well, my quandary, I should have asked him this, has his frame of reference, however, to a lot of our health and wellness talk been lifespan, just living longer?
Oh,
like if that's the goal, because I think what he was saying today is
then he said, I don't want to be,
it's not really motivating. And so I would
agree.
I would say that. So to look at going, okay, Kevin, if you do all this healthy stuff, you can live an extra 5 years. And then to the other topic we got onto, because my thought is, okay, if that means denying myself of comforts and pleasures and ice cream and wine and coffee and whatever, dude, I'll give up 5 years for that. I'll live to 90 instead of 95 or 85 to 90, or, again, you can all choose what's good for you. Some people may say, hey, I'm good to just have fun and live having a good time till I'm 65 and then
check out.
End it, as opposed to all this Puritan denial and stuff. And yeah, I get to live till 90, but it sucks.
Right.
I get that concept too. And that is not what we're talking about and I think what hit him is none of us, to your word, want to linger. Who of us wants to say, okay, I'm okay with getting to a certain point in life. And then all of a sudden, boom, 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 my capacity and ability starts negating and I am handicapped. And what we got into talking about with him, which a lot of people are dealing with then, is he said that we're going to have to take care of them. We're starting to have to take care of them.
Yeah.
Who's going to take care of me? And him going, I don't want to be a burden on my kids.
Right.
And also, who wants to live? Who wants to say, I'd be okay waking up tomorrow with dementia, with physical handicap, shuffling around, drooling in the court? Nobody wants that. We've gotten to expect that. So then we're talking about health span. And to that degree, would I rather live? And, we can play with this, but dude, I don't want to live to be 100. But from 80 to 100 years old, I'm just sitting in a chair, disabled. I'd rather live full capacity till 80 and then it stops. Though I say that we can't ever, I surmise that because what if I do have a physical inability or something like that, and I'm in a handicapped chair and I write my ultimate book.
No, it's very important in this health span place. How many times, like if we went to an average 80-year-old and said, do you feel, let's say they're not in a nursing home. They don't, they have full capacities of their mind. Okay. Now imagine an 80-year-old and say, even though you can't do what you could have done 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, do you feel right now like you're lingering, like your life is not worth it, like you want to just check out? Okay. And most people, barring, depression, anxiety, and some of the things like that, are going to say no, because I love my grandkids and I enjoy this and I like to read and all that. So for the guys that are working on the research of health span and longevity, it pointed it out to me that we might, and our 50-year-old self say, oh, if my 80-year-old self was that, it would be terrible. I would be unhappy, unfulfilled, and whatever. And well, you don't know that. And if we go to the 80-year-olds right now who are to whatever degree feeble, they don't perceive themselves as lingering.
Yeah.
That now, again, take dementia out and, people who can think of sound mind and body and all that, they really don't perceive themselves as lingering. But then if you say, okay, well, what are the biomarkers that are going to measure health span? Because you and I have talked about forever, what is health in the first place? That is a nearly unanswerable situation.
Well, it'd be like answering what is success? I guess whatever it is to you.
Yeah. And if I feel successful, am I successful? It's a very, very, so as you and I had kind of talked about it after our guys group and said, well, what does Google say? And so when I'm banging around on Google, it isn't, you and I have said health span with some clarity because we're on the same wavelength, but it really isn't clear. How do we research this with what biomarkers, what measuring stick of health? Who gets to decide who is healthy? Is this a WHO, World Health Organization thing, or
because then it would be boiling it down to some type of measurement. So at the age of 65, like what you said, how many push-ups, how many pull-ups, how fast can you run a mile, and then go to the cognitive side with cognitive testing, which you can do.
What are we going to measure there?
Well, I mean, you could measure it to some degree, but there's no marker that says,
okay, now you're healthy, or now you're not.
Yeah.
And ultimately in my practice with, we've talked about that before. That's what we define as, well, Kevin, what do you define as true life? That's what we work towards.
Yeah.
And I would agree that, yep, that's what medicine ought to be doing. And we don't want to work backwards to, okay, what does the doctor define as pathology? That's what the whole system is built on is, well, I'm pretty healthy, but I have this and that and this and that. So, I've talked about on the show, even lots of those things but in a broader scope, kind of a perspective, thinking about longevity, lifespan versus health span. And then right now, how many bowls of ice cream are you and I not going to do in order to theoretically increase our health span? Or because ice cream is a part of enjoyment of life right now, are we going to imbibe in and call it health by call it success because I'm enjoying this thing. So I did, spend 30 minutes on looking at the research papers and the guys who are writing. It's pretty remarkable. Age by the next ICD-10, so it'll be ICD-11, meaning
layman's term. That's a doctor code.
That's the insurance code book. That's right. On naming all of the diseases, all of the ways that you can be a little bit broken or a lot broken. I mean, it goes into weird things like, shark bite, like on the left arm or the right arm, it's all a different code. So there's hundreds of thousands of these things. And for the first time ever, we think that ICD-11, because the powers that be have to make up these things, age is going to be listed as a disease, aging. Wow. So this is a fundamental philosophical switch from saying aging, the negative side of it, happens, but it will be flipped around to say it's a disease, which has all kinds of political problems there. But that means everybody is diagnosed with this because everybody has age and everybody is aging. But how do we, so the guy's looking at, can we slow down the aging process? Can we increase health span?
Yeah, which gets into like the ageism thing, which I poke at sometimes because here we are, you and I are at 50. We now get the AARP magazines or whatever. And, our insurance costs more and those things. Doesn't matter if we have the health of a 30-year-old or a 30-year-old has the health of a 50-year-old. You're based on age, not on actual health.
Correct.
Yeah.
And now that is more than, we live in a world where where fluidity is now this new thing. And at the same time, we've got the powers that be that are going to say, no, it's not fluid. Right now, there's 162,000 markers of pathology, of disease. And if one of them is going to become this thing called aging, how in the world would that ever be assessed and who pays for it? And that's where I disagree with the research foundational fundamental philosophy of saying, hey, the government, the industry is going to be responsible to help you, Kevin Miller, become less old over time.
Yeah.
It won't work. I'm going to argue that if that's going to be the foundational philosophy, then the conclusion will fail. But if we go to individual humans and on the power of free will and recognizing that within your entity, God-given, created selfness of freedom and power and valuing, and that we're back to how do you define health and health span. That's a powerful thing. And when we can put the power back to the people of letting them define it and we work towards it. And I still would like to do some research on, okay, well, what if we collect 100 guys and watch them for 20 years and measure push-ups?
Yeah.
Those studies are so expensive to do. We can't do them on our own. Who's going to pay for it? I don't know. But here's you and I, we're talking with Todd this morning and saying, okay, are you going to have a bowl of ice cream tonight, Kevin?
Yeah. Hopefully.
Will it be increasing your health span because of the glory and enjoyment, life-giving celebration? That's right. And
then, to your thing of health and success, that we can't put a definitive measurement on there because it is individual. And ultimately we're talking about, to me, I'm thinking at the end of it is what gives us joy and fulfillment. I mean, at some point that's it. So whatever level, if success for you is having, I have $1,000 in the bank, or I have 100 million at the end, if you're both equally joy-filled and at peace and fulfilled, who cares? It's both success. There's no measurement on that. So we're talking about that here. And so I'm looking at it and going, man, if I am 80 in a wheelchair, not able to think clearly, I'm not going to have joy and fulfillment. Of course, what you're saying is you don't know about that because you don't know what you're going to think at 80. Maybe you'll be okay. Which
we get stuck.
We get stuck in that. But to Todd's thing, he is looking, I think, his statement, he's looking there and discerning that he would rather not be at the state that his mom is at, where she is not able to interact with, engage with, join the family in these things, that he's seeing other people at her age that are able to, and he's doing that comparison, so it's
his mom, if we use that, maybe she's sharp as a tack, full of joy and peace, and says, you know what? I choose to be at peace and full of gratitude. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy. You guys go off and do that hike. I'll be sitting here waiting for you when you come home. We'll have dinner and it'll be joyful. And that's kind of, we are going to be on the spectrum of some level of disability at 80, right? And I think you and I would also say, I'm going to endeavor to be choosing every day between now and then to be joyful and filled with gratitude and peace and contentment with wherever I am, so that if I can walk at 80 or not walk at 80, I still have joy and contentment.
Well, that would be wise to do regard for us now, because I might, in my duathlon race tomorrow, hit a tree, break my leg irreparably, and can't walk again.
Yep.
So am I preparing now to be okay if that happens?
Yeah.
I should be. There's no, it's only going to help things. Now, that said, I have no reason to plan on wanting to be disabled. And if I think right now I want to be, like we've talked about, doing, 10 pull-ups or 20 pull-ups or 10 burpees, I keep focusing on that because I love the mobility that a burpee requires to be able to do that. Or like your thing of being able to, can you sit down on the ground and then stand back up without using your hands? That's a measurement.
It's a
biomarker of health. So what is the harm? If we did a pros and cons, what's the possibility of harm or help of pro or con that's made possible if I can still do 10 burpees when I am 80? Chances are I'll be more able to participate in things. My brain will be working better by proxy. When we do, I'm always enamored with that when they show the 80-year-old who just won, this sporting event or set a record doing the plank, like some 60-some-year-old guy. That's cool. But I'm always interested in looking at going, do you notice that they're sharp as a tack? Their brains are working? Probably a correlation.
Yeah.
Statistically. So we could say statistically there is. So if I want to not have brain fog, not have dementia, I am looking at the stats and say, man, statistically, I'm better off to be able to do 10 burpees every day for as long as possible.
And then, but keep your thought going. What's the likelihood of the downside? Is there because there is a downside, because in order to do that, you're going to have to sacrifice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, let's stick with the ice cream idea, because in order to keep on increasing the chances that you have cognitive clarity, eating no ice cream between now and 80 is one way to do it, but then you miss out on joy and celebration and those things. Eating ice cream every day is one way to do it, but you decrease the chance in all likelihood of becoming that guy. And so there we are on the spectrum.
Well, and I want to dig it. Let's get literal with ice cream. Okay. That you and I really like that. Okay. So
Friars mint chocolate chip.
I said, I'm not a mint guy. Yeah. I do the vanilla, but then I'll add, peanut butter is my favorite thing to add to. Okay. But look at that. So let's go over 5 years of consistent ice cream, whether it's daily or not. Let's just say 5 years of consistent ice cream. So first off, if you were to spend the 5 years of not having any with the feeling of
deprivation,
exactly.
Yeah.
A negative attitude. Bitterness. Let's just go there. I'm bitter.
I wanted it. I can't have it.
I would say you're better off eating it. It's arguable.
That's right.
Healthspan wise, it's arguable. It's joy. We're talking, but let's just say it's a valid question.
Yeah, no, that there you go.
Okay.
As we were thinking about the research of this, because at the end of the day, people are asking me, well, what's the right answer? And then as a doctor, I want to say, well, randomized, double-blind, placebo trial says you should do this in this place. And that's what we're trying to bring out is Healthspan and longevity. The research is, it's nearly it's hard to get the question right. What's our hypothesis that we're going to test? Right. That's in research. You got to have a very clear hypothesis and a clear test and a clear answer. In health and nutrition, it's famously, and we're walking it out now with a vast amount of confusion because every book we ever thought about says, well, research says you should be a vegan or vegetarian or this or that or the other, and it's not settled. And so now we're hypothesizing, okay, let's take I'm going to volunteer to be the guy who has ice cream every day. You volunteer to be the guy who doesn't. And then 5 years, we're going to go down the road. And what are we going to measure? Burpees? Attitude? How in the world? We know that if you had a good attitude about saying, I am choosing to be grateful for my ability to be grateful without ice cream.
Yeah. And well, in reality, my thought is if we took your biomarkers there, all of them, all your health and wellness biomarkers, everyone that we can think of, possibly from heart rate variability to,
cholesterol, blood pressure.
Yeah, we took yours and took mine. Is at the end of the 5 years, let's look at them again and check them to the best. And look, are they the same? Are they better? Are they worse? And we're going to say, okay, let's say yours are better because you had the ice cream and yours are better.
Right.
And we're going to look at mine without pulling in other factors and show. And that's where I'm wondering if I was bitter about that, was it really helping me? Maybe I would have been better to have the ice cream. Is an aspect. But now let's go to you though, too, because what's going to change in that, let's say you're having it and it's joyful, is what kind of ice cream was it? Mm-hmm. That daily input, was it the complete crap? Because you can buy ice cream for $1. What is it? It's not a pint, half gallon, whatever they come in, and look at that. And the ingredient list is to Michael Pollan's food rules. It's got 50 ingredients,
and it's ice cream that doesn't melt. And
it's just, and it's stuff that your grandmother or your kid can't pronounce. Right. And it's all these chemicals. So if that's the ice cream you're putting in, that matters different than if it's
cream,
Breyers with
dairy, sugar. Right.
Well, I was gonna say Breyers, vanilla, or they have a couple flavors, maybe the mint and the chocolate, that have like 5 ingredients.
Right. They also have the not so great ones.
Yeah. You get the Breyers with 1 ingredient and all of a sudden it has 50 ingredients in corn syrup. So we get the one kind.
There's a few.
So it depends on what kind you're having. And then we would look at, well, how much are you having? Is it a half cup or is it 4 cups, which is also going to matter according to, are you 5 foot, 90 pound person, or are you whatever? So it's not just, we can't take that measurement pertaining to you,
basal metabolic rate, all, how you,
even how well you digest
and how well you digest,
your
and
insulin response.
What time of day do you go to bed right after?
That was my next one is, are you having that ice cream at 5 PM, 6 PM, or at 12:30 AM right before you go to sleep, after you've been on screens so
all of that is why the research in this area is so difficult, and quite honestly, I don't think will really ever be elucidated. Some of the guys in this aging research world are banking. Peter Diamandis being one of them. This is a rabbit trail. Did you get his recent?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
My dad said it, yeah.
Okay, well that's a different thing, but. It's these guys come together for this, mastermind, and hey, we're going to figure out this aging thing. And I'm like, no, you're not. Mm-hmm. But okay, what if everybody's wearing all these wearables that are looking at all these things, but there's not going to be a wearable about your attitude? Now, maybe HRV or something like that.
I was going to say, I would hope it shows if I am bitter, angry, anxious, scared, fearful, whatever, my heart rate is going to be higher. Yeah. So then my resting heart rate is, but
again, let's say you're bitter and your biomarkers do something. Is my bitterness going to come out the same way? And no,
right. No, yours could, your heart rate could be okay, but you got diarrhea.
Right. And that's where theoretically, and Peter Diamandis and those guys are saying, hey, if we can get enough data, we can make it make sense. Mm-hmm. And okay, so maybe the world goes down, everybody gets a wearable and an implantable chip, and we collect biomarkers galore in everybody, and it all goes to the cloud in the sky, the Thunderhead from another one of our books. And information comes down that says, yes, with a good attitude, you can have ice cream 3 days a week and not 4 days a week. for Kevin Miller, and Randy James can have it 4 days a week, but not 3 days a week. Oh, is that conceivable? Yes.
Well, and the monitoring, if it gave us awareness and said, hey, we just noticed that your resting heart rate is up consistently 5 beats more the past 3 days. Is anything going on? And if you say, gosh, absolutely no. Generally, though, I would figure you'd say, hey, you know what? I've been having ice cream every night, or I've been staying up, or I got some relational stress or financial stress, or blah, 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 blah.
It's a feedback loop for awareness.
How great was that? Because I think for the most part, we are unaware. We go along and we think we're handling.
Yeah. But again, everybody, if we pick on something, everybody who smoked was aware that they smoked, and they smoked. And sugar would be theoretically this number one drug. I am aware when I put a donut in my mouth.
I don't like that analogy, though. Smoking is so blatant. I think most of the things that we're doing.
My point there was they didn't change. They knew, people know that what I'm doing is bad or whatever.
It just feels like, I'm with you. I just feel like that's such a blatant decision.
I'm using an extreme as an example of, but even if you were aware of, hey, your feedback chip in your arm says, is something going on? Are you okay? And you're like, oh, well, let me think about that. Oh yeah, would you say, golly, I mean, this is the question for you right now. Would you say, you're right, I'm not going to have ice cream tonight? It depends on
if I'm going to say, if I'm aspiring to wellness already. I mean, if I'm already that minded, would I care? Yes. If I'm the average person who doesn't, maybe it wouldn't matter. No, I'm with you on that. Maybe they would get that and go, I don't care. I'm thinking of your patients sometimes who you would say, so, talk about their diet and they go, I'm gluten-free. And what do you often hear? How they define that.
I eat a lot of gluten-free muffins.
Yeah. Or I only have, just like a piece of bread a day.
Or one guy said, I only have one piece of toast per day.
You're like, I'm gluten-free. That's not gluten-free. And so sometimes I think that we are unaware, and we have these things we do that we think are kind of just innocuous, benign things. And if it were brought to our attention, we would be more prone to respond to it. To let it matter, to care.
We would certainly have the opportunity to cognitively.
And your thing, what's the most dangerous thing Randy James says is we don't know what we don't know.
What you don't know. Yeah.
And so to help us know,
that's fair.
I like the monitoring, but again, back to this aspect of Healthspan, it only matters in regards to that imaginary measurement I always talk about is, what symptoms are you okay with? What performance do you want? And I'm stuck on thinking about yours. I am projecting that into my 60, 70, 80-year-old self. Do I assume that I'll still be Kevin, as we all do? Because we all think that was, what is that? Benjamin Hardy, who I talk about so much. He has a book coming out called something like Become Your Future Self Now, or something like that that's happening. And in that, he talks about, and he has a term for it, I can't remember, that when we ask ourselves, 5 years, do you feel like you've changed in the past 5 years? You're a different person. Most people say
no. I mean,
but like, do you have new thoughts, new ideas?
Yeah. I think my 5-year-old self is immature, childish, almost
5 years ago.
5 years ago, right?
I can't believe I was thinking that way. So we all think that we've changed. But then if you ask that same question going forward, do you think you're going to be dramatically different?
No, where I am right now, I'm pretty.
I've arrived at who I am
pretty well.
Yeah. And the reality is, 5 years from now, we're going to look back on us right this second and go, holy smokes. I can't
believe I was thinking that.
Yeah. So, our perspectives change.
Sure.
But.
And that is true. Your 53-year-old self, you see your 80-year-old self as something. And the likelihood that the way you see it now is that it's going to be true then is close to zero.
Yeah. Now, again, but I am going to go to, what do you call it? Evidence-based, or, just what I see. Here in Colorado, it's very stark. I'm out on the trails a lot and out, outside with people. And when we're with somebody who, let's just say, is 75, and they are fit, trim, vibrant, out doing a 5K, whatever, I am used to seeing smiles. And I would say that word vibrant. They're vibrant people. To be that age and be fit and well, they generally have a desire to be vibrant. So, there's a lot in there. When I see that same person who is handicapped mentally, physically, I surely don't perceive as much joy and fulfillment. I will attest to that. That say it's no test, no
just in general.
Fact, no reality, no proven thing, but in general. And it gives me very little motivation, back to our friend Todd, to look at that infirmity and go, and yeah, that's okay. I'm good with that. Looks good. I'm looking forward to that. I'm not looking forward to that. I would say I have hopefully a healthy fear for that. Maybe I have some unhealthy as well. Caution. Like somebody could ask me, why do you put so much stock, Kevin, in your self-image of being fit, able, trim, capable, athletic, whatever? That's a worthy question. Am I a prisoner to it? That would be the question. Am I a prisoner to it? Do I have anxiety? Am I the kind of person that, oh my gosh, I didn't work out today. And I'm not going to be acceptable to myself or God or my spouse or humanity, or we're back to the mindset,
right? Do you feel forced, deprived of choice, deprived of spontaneity because you gotta go do
deprived of choice? I love that, because I've seldom feel deprived of choice from anybody else. I'm pretty autonomous in my life. I have realizing now that I often deprive myself of choice.
My wife and I were talking about that very thing, because she and I naturally, delayed gratification. You don't do this now so you can get a good grade.
Yeah.
So then you get a good job so that you can, invest in the future. And young people these days, there's less, I think, tendency towards that. And there's more tendency towards gratify right now.
Yeah.
Lack of patience, and neither right, wrong, good or bad. And if I talk to my son about something like this, he's like, yeah, I don't feel like not satisfying my appetite right now. I'll do that later. We hear a lot of later. And I think he's approaching the age of, well, I'm pretty sure you won't. So let's just go ahead and get that thing done now. But am I putting myself into a negative place if I am not having ice cream or whatever? Yes, we're all on the scale of that. We have to be. And it is I think it's this conversation that we're trying to help people to be becoming aware that, there's a lot of research going into aging and what's good aging and slowing it down. And there's a lot of research in mindset, attitude, gratitude.
And we got to, we pull this out a lot. Some of it is we are being forced to, because it is unsustainable. That's something right. That the culture doesn't want to admit, but the government knows, the medical community,
biomarkers of negative cost, consequences.
Insurance companies know. I mean,
we talk about those things all the time. The hockey stick issues of anxiety and depression, dementia.
The cost for healthcare is, it's not.
It's unsustainable.
Yeah. It's monopoly money. It's not there.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And it's okay.
So they're having to look at
you and I. Yes. And I just don't see it translating. There's also journals called translational science. I don't see that research translating to you and me and our listeners that would say, oh, I'm okay. 2 days a week, I'm going to have ice cream. It just isn't going to be I think we're decades away from a translational science that actually leads to people having confidence in their decisions based on research and what your doctor tells you.
Right.
Where I'm speaking to you and I and to people listening is you take responsibility for this, which you will anyway. Even if the doctor tells you to do this or that, you're still going to have to do it on your own accord. And in that space of Healthspan, now we're back to the 4 pillars. What?
Yeah.
Can we summarize to say, is there a conclusion to ice cream? Is there a conclusion?
No.
And I would agree with that.
No,
just like there's not a conclusion to how do you do
based
a marriage?
On personal, I think, joy, fulfillment. I think being aware of your goals is big. And I wanted to bring to light this issue of health span as related to lifespan. Because I'm concerned, just like what Todd talked about, lifespan, they talk about it. I don't think it's a big motive. It's not a big motive for me, ultimately. My goal is, I mean, I literally don't, I mean, I'm actually fine. I would I choose what?
Death is easy.
Death is easy. But would I choose to live as long as I can and be I would say yes, as long as I'm capable during that time, because there's things that I would like to do and contribute and whatever. So I'm not in a hurry to die. But health span is by proxy the
far more motivating
measurement, that I'm thinking of, because I'm assuming lifespan with health span. So when we talk here lifespan, I don't think people are motivated by it. Let's change the discussion to health span.
One of the things I saw on Google was that the Google searches for lifespan dwarfs that of health span.
Oh, sure.
And the question was why. And I think, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to do the show, is that people don't understand health span.
Yeah.
And they say, well, and I've heard for decades now, well, you got to die something. Well, you got to, it's like, no, the last part of your life, you're going to be less capable than you are now. And you're going to linger with something. What do you want to linger with?
Yeah.
I would rather linger with the complex decision of, should I have ice cream tonight or not, rather than I'm forced to not be able to go on a walk, not be able to ski, not be able to do all of these other kind of things. Your life is shrunken down. And I know my life will be shrunken down to a degree. And it's that we're saying push back on that equals the theoretical increase in my version of what I call health span.
Yeah.